James Ballenger from Ballenger Motorsports. James, tell us about how you got started in motorsports.
Well, I got interested in high school, just got really interested in cars, and picked up an old beater at the time, an old Trans Am, and decided I want to pursue a career in motorsports. So I managed to pay my way through college, doing something unrelated, and went into Formula SAE in college. And in Formula SAE, we were building little open-wheel race cars, basically on the side. So you're trying to do your full-time school and trying to build a race car at the same time, which was a little bit taxing, but it was a lot of fun. It was a great experience. I still go back and I judge those cars now as a design judge. And
what school was it?
Virginia Tech. Yeah, stayed in Virginia. It's the good way to keep it inexpensive, because I grew up here and got the in-state tuition and everything, so allowed me to work my way through.
So I first met you. You were working at electromotive engineering. Is it electromotive engineering? Or
yeah.
something
So
like
after college, I went into an ECU manufacturer called Electromotive. They were based in Manassas. They still are based in Manassas, and did some design work. And we were doing a new ECU line. Came out with that, and myself and another engineer left that company and founded another company called Powertrain Control Solutions. And we did automatic transmission control systems. And that's really the bulk of what I've done since college, has been mechatronic work and electronic custom engineering. Did that for a few years, and then started my own company. And since then, we've been doing custom electronics design, a lot of sensors, a lot of logging equipment, wire harnesses, and a lot of interconnect parts. Basically, when I started that business, those parts were really hard to come by. You had to order 100,000 pieces from companies like Sumitomo. So we were buying them in bulk and making them available to consumer for the first time ever. So you could put them on your Toyota or your Nissan or whatever the case is. This is one system that we're using. This is an AIM dash, and we get to see information on there. It's just in a dead state right now, basically, but there's screens that give us sort of predictive timing and all kinds of things about the car. And usually we use a screen like this for the drivers, and it comes on with a dummy warning that basically replaces the whole gauge cluster. So you don't have to watch the gauges anymore. That's the big thing, because we found that a few drivers out there don't actually watch the gauges. Thinking of Troy specifically.
Because he's not used to having gauges.
Yeah, well, so he had a gauge coolant, and our car spiked on temperature one time. He thought it was fine the whole time. We went back and watched the video and saw it spike to 235, 240 or something like that during his stint. So now we have this that has dummy warnings that comes on and tells you, hey driver, you need to do something about this. You know, say temperature too high, pit now, call, etc., that kind of thing.
So does this kind of stuff, does that help you save money?
It does. They're expensive. These dashes are actually very expensive, and a lot of people balk at the cost initially. But what we are able to do is save the parts. We're able to keep the engines running longer. We're able to stay more reliable. We're able to get the information back to the pits, and we have a wireless telemetry system, so we can see things like fuel status, is the diff okay, that kind of thing. So we can be predictive in terms of when our fuel stops need to happen, and basically we can see things before they fail. So we're able to take steps early on, and hopefully we just get into preventative maintenance instead of blowing things up.
So what's your name?
Jared?
Jared, what do you do with Ballenger Motorsports, or whatever they call the team?
I think River City Racing, or
Yeah, there we go.
Team Unicorn something. I forget. It's got a number of names. I do a lot of just the CAN bus work between like the dash and ECU, like mapping the devices together.
What kind of dash do you guys use?
AIM MXG.
And that integrates with the ECU and all the other stuff?
Yeah, the EMU Black ECU. We have a Smarty Cam that it sends data to also, and Race Capture Pro that uses real-time telemetry that you can watch on, I think it's podium.live.
So James, what got you into ChumpCar?
Well, I used to race and track motorcycles, and after a few too many incidents, I was interested in pursuing cars, and had been looking at ChumpCar, Lemons, and some other series, some other budget series, NASA, SCCA for a while. I got initially involved with a Turbo Miata, doing some NASA races, NASA events, and I went to a Lemons event with Troy Trulio, and there were problems with the car at the time. Since then, he's become more reliable, but I worked with him, and we just kind of kept going from there. We knew each other from some past work at Electromotive years ago, and got involved through Troy, and we've been working cooperatively on his car, and then we started doing this car in 2014 with fewer races, but we're ramping it up a little bit. We had that 1UZ engine. Initially, we were a KA24 in this car, the 240 SX. So it was the original inline 4. Then we moved up to V8, which is sort of outlawed now. And now we swapped it to another low-power V6, basically. And now that we've got the formula down, we're pretty happy with the series and the direction that ChumpCar has been going in the last year or so. So we're pretty excited about that, and we've decided to really dive in for 2018 and do a lot more races.
So James, Atlanta Motorsports Park a couple of weeks ago for the championship. You guys went out for the practice day and you had some bad luck. Tell us about that.
Yeah, so we had just gotten a new engine in this car, and we were working for weeks up to that point, getting every little detail dialed in, and we hadn't tuned the car. We were tuning at the track, doing it in the parking lot a little bit, and yeah, we were kind of late on everything and didn't have everything completely down. But what got us was a stuck injector. We'd actually had them cleaned, and it was just one of those fluke events that knocked our engine out on the back straight, and that was trouble. We'd already been really pushing ourselves to get to the race in the first place. So when that blew, we had an engine hunt that day. We blew it about 2:45 in the afternoon, and it was a Friday, so we were dealing with Atlanta traffic. We found a few engines. They varied in price and then how quickly we could get to them. So we sent someone out with a truck to go get an engine as quickly as we could get it. And the first place he couldn't get to in time, so we found another place, and we had to ask him to stay open late just so we could even get the engine. So they stayed open to 6:15, and we managed to get an engine. Brought it back, and we had been stripping down the engine and taking it out. And because it's a Maxima motor, it sits the other way. Ours is rear-wheel drive, Maxima's front-wheel drive. So we have some parts to make it work on our rear-wheel drive application, which means all those parts had to be swapped over, and that really hurt us in terms of time too, because all those things took a lot of effort to get over. So in the future, we're going to have a hot spare set up for our trans and our engine, but in this case, we think we probably would have been able to finish up around 9-10 maybe if it had been just a normal swap without all the extra parts we had to deal with. In this case, yeah, we were struggling. We were up till 4:30 in the morning. Two guys, myself and Morgan on the team. We had one guy who he started making tons of mistakes around 2 a.m. and he couldn't do it anymore. So we had to put him to bed basically.
Put him to sleep.
Yeah. And a couple other guys around 3 roughly in the morning, and those guys they weren't as sort of mechanically inclined, so they weren't. They were kind of helping us at that point, but
right.
Their effort wasn't critical, so we sent them to bed too. And so we got the engine all swapped in, and we didn't try to fire it up at 4:30 in the morning, wake everybody up in the pits, out of respect to everybody. So next morning, Morgan went out and he fired it up, and we could hear the engine coming over and diagnose when it was at TDC, and what we were finding is it was slowing down at number 1 TDC and basically stopping the motor. And so we start pulling parts and figure out there's injector just stuck wide open. And we were lucky we didn't damage anything again. Morgan's diagnostic work there was great, and figured it out, got another injector in there, got it out. We got lucky because we had tuned it with that injector partially stuck in the paddock the day before. And we managed to get it out, get it on track, and run the entire race with that junkyard motor, with that everything as it was, basically just one part swapped out.
So you started out late.
Yeah, so it took us, I think somewhere between 21 and 23 laps down is where we started. And where we ended up, we managed to claw ourselves back several times. And we had a couple driver incidents. One guy got black flagged, and he had an incident on track, and that cost us about 13 minutes. So if we had had just a great race, we would have been able to probably crack top 10. As it was, we got 14th. But out of the field, doing that at 4:30 in the morning, getting everything in there, and just, really working our asses off. It was really taxing for everybody. We managed to get back out there and get back to, the top 15.
Yeah. So you had some incidences on track. We've seen one where Mike Helm almost T-boned a car.
Yeah.
Was able to save it.
Yeah, that was a miraculous save. He was coming up on the front straight, and this was in the monsoon-like conditions on Saturday. And you can see in our video, we got a Smarty Cam over here that shows out and shows everything. You can see in the video, he came up and he couldn't see the car coming up. It was on the right-hand side against the wall. All of a sudden, it sort of appears in his vision, and he has a car to the left of him. He really has nowhere to go. So he hits it and manages to just swerve over and somehow not hit the car. He goes over to the other side of the track and just barely bumps the guardrail. And he came back in, we assessed the damage, and basically there was none. It was great.
Except the seat.
Yeah. it may be a little discolored then and now.
Funny. The conditions were insanely bad.
Yeah, so in this car we've got this system here, which is just a blower that blows on the windshield. We used to have defrost lines across it. In the cold races, what we find is that you get cracking, so it can be a little problematic. What we ended up doing was taking this other fan, which actually pulls from an aqueduct on the back, and we ended up routing that up and under on the windshield too later in the day, and that helped a little bit. But yeah, the mist, the fog, the rain, and the temperature just led to conditions where the visibility was terrible. The track was difficult to manage, and ironically, that was our safer day. We had less driver incidents on that day than we did on the dry but cold Sunday. So we had some people who were really worried about dying. Just one of those little details, they're like, basically, we had a little bit of a fuel leak in here, and we really, really didn't want fire to make it forward. So now we have basically a firewall up there, and then we have a deck lid, and the deck lid extends back here. But the deck lid screws came loose during the A&P race. The whole thing folded back and was held on by one remaining screw. And we had to take that off. We had to take that off during the race.
Did it pull the rib nuts out, or did it
No.
just... Okay.
No.
They literally,
okay.
they backed out the whole way.
Yeah.
And then one found himself in Troy's rotor.
Yeah.
We have a lot of new teams that are looking at coming to race with ChumpCar for 2018. What kind of advice do you have for these teams for their first race?
For the first race, I would say look at everything that's rubber on the car. Anything that's elastomeric that will have worn out. It could be a radiator cap, it could be a bushing, it could be a hose. In the early teams, those are the things that I see failing all the time. They fail consistently, and they may look fine on the outside. It may be a hose that looks fine, and then suddenly it's a burst radiator hose or power steering hose or whatever it is. So go through everything on the car that is going to wear out and just crack apart.
I don't like the seat.
Wait. You should be, of the drivers, this should fit you.
Oh, I love this. This is great.
So what's the problem with the seat?
John.
What's wrong with it?
It squeezes too hard.
Well, you shouldn't be so muscular.
That's what the
One sexy Joey.
that's what
Hot Joey. Hot Joey.
Hot Joey.
that's what the straps are for. Like they keep you to the seat. This is just like
So you're saying you got too much triangle on your man bod?
at the wrong place. Yeah.
What would you do different if you could start all over again?
If I could start all over again, I would have a much more focused view of weight. I probably would have a different cage to start with. I would be tying in a little bit differently, and I would be doing some of the bars and attachments differently, and I would be taking out more weight when it's just in shell form. I would also have started with a better driver development package, basically. Try to get the drivers up to speed faster and get more information to them earlier. We have been doing that, but I focused more on the actual car than the drivers, and in retrospect, I think I'd move that around a little bit.
The car?
What do you think?
What do you think? Is that a good seat, John?
Pretty good.
Yeah.
Is that your favorite new race seat? Do you approve this seat? Is this one going to be John approved?